Hey, it's Kesha. Welcome and welcome back. Definitely the best part of my Sunday. Spending this time here with you and reading the Aquarian. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and close our eyes and center. Take a deep breath in and out. Another deep breath in and out. And just feel your body, feel your mind collecting itself and becoming more present in this time and space in this moment. And with each inhale, pick up any stress or worries, any cares or concerns, and release them on the exhale. And now see a column of white light descend over you. And as you breathe in the air from this column, notice that it's cool and refreshing. And notice how it has the ability to fill you up and fill in the spaces between the cells. It quickens the cells of the body and you feel more alive and enlivened. Any false thoughts or any thoughts in error begin to dissolve in the presence of this light. And you are left free and whole, standing in truth. And it's in this space, from this perspective, that we want to center our mind's eye in the wisdom of our heart to receive the teaching that is the Aquarian today. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. I wasn't sure I was going to be ready. I love this. All right. Where are we? We are in Heliopolis. Somebody doesn't always mark their pages, which is kind of silly. All right, I think this is it. Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. In all the land, there was no place more grandly furnished than the beauty parlors of the Temple of the Sun. Few students ever entered these rich rooms. The priests regarded them with awe and called them halls of mysteries. When Jesus had attained the victory over fear, he gained the right to enter here. The guide led on the way, and after passing many richly furnished rooms, they reached the Hall of Harmony. And here Jesus was left alone. Among the instruments of music was a harpsichord, and Jesus sat in thoughtful mood inspecting it, when quietly a maiden of entrancing beauty came into the hall. She did not seem to notice Jesus as he sat and mused, so busy with his thoughts. She found her place beside the harpsichord. She touched the chords most gently and sang the songs of Israel. And Jesus was entranced. Such beauty he had never seen, such music he had never heard. The maiden sang her songs. She did not seem to know that anyone was near, and she went away. And Jesus, talking with himself, said out, "What is the meaning of this incident? I did not know that such entrancing beauty and such queen-like loveliness were ever found among the sons of men. I did not know that voice of angel ever graced a human form, or that seraphic music had ever come from human lips." For days he sat entranced. The current of his thoughts was changed. He thought of nothing but the singer and her songs. He longed to see her once again, and after certain days she came. She spoke and laid her hand upon his head. Her touch thrilled all his soul, and for the time, forgotten was the work that he was sent to do. Few were the words the maiden said. She went her way. But then the heart of Jesus had been touched. A love flame had been kindled in his soul, and he was brought to face the sorest trial of his life. He did not sleep nor eat. Thoughts of the maiden came, they would not go. His carnal nature called out for her companionship. And then he said, "Lo, I have conquered every foe that I have met, and shall I now be conquered by this carnal love? My Father sent me here to show the power of love divine, that love that reaches every living thing. Shall this pure universal love be all absorbed by carnal love? Shall I forget all creatures else and lose my life in this fair maiden, though she is the highest type of beauty, purity, and love?" Into its very depths his soul was stirred, and long he wrestled with this angel idol of his heart. But when the day was almost lost, his higher ego rose in might. He found himself again, and then he said, "Although my heart shall break, I will not fail in this my hardest task. I will be victor over carnal love." And when again the maiden came and offered him her hand and heart, he said, "Fair one, your very presence thrills me with delight. Your voice is benediction to my soul. My human self would fly with you and be contented in your love. But all the world is craving for a love that I have come to manifest. I must then bid you go, but we will meet again. Our ways on earth will not be cast apart. I see you in the hurrying throngs of earth as ministers of love. I hear your voice in song that wins the hearts of men to better things." And then in sorrow and in tears the maiden went away, and Jesus was again alone. And instantly the great bells of the temple rang. The singers sang a new song. The grotto blazed with light. The Hierophant himself appeared and said, "All hail, triumphant Logos, hail! The conqueror of carnal love stands on the heights." And then he placed in Jesus' hands a scroll on which was written, "Love Divine." Together they passed from the grotto of the beautiful, and in the banquet hall a feast was served, and Jesus was the honored guest. The senior course of study was now opened up, and Jesus entered and became a pupil of the Hierophant. He learned the secrets of the mystic lore of Egypt land, the mysteries of life and death, and of the worlds beyond the circle of the sun. When he had finished all the studies of the senior course, he went into the chamber of the dead, that he might learn the ancient methods of preserving from decay the bodies of the dead. And here he wrought, and carriers brought the body of a widow's only son to be embalmed. The weeping mother followed close. Her grief was great. And Jesus said, "Good woman, dry your tears. You follow but an empty house. Your son is in it not. You weep because your son is dead. Death is a cruel word. Your son can never die. He had a task assigned to do in the garb of flesh. He came, he did his work, and then he laid the flesh aside. He did not need it more. Beyond your human sight, he has other work to do, and he will do it well and then pass on to other tasks, and by he will attain the crown of perfect life. And what your son has done and yet he must do, we all must do. Now, if you harbor grief and give your sorrows vent, they will grow greater every day. They will absorb your very life until at last you will be naught but grief, wet down with bitter tears. Instead of helping him, you grieve your son by your deep grief. He seeks your solace now as he ever has done, is glad that you are glad, is saddened when you grieve. Go bury deep your woes and smile at grief, and lose yourself in helping others dry their tears. With duty done comes happiness and joy, and gladness cheers the hearts of those who have passed on. The weeping woman turned and went her way to find a happiness and helpfulness, to bury her deep sorrows in a ministry of joy. Then other carriers came and brought the body of a mother to the chamber of the dead. And just one mourner followed, she a girl of tender years. And as the cortege neared the door, the child observed a wounded bird in sore distress. A cruel hunter's dart had pierced its breast. And she left following the dead and went to help the living bird. With tenderness and love, she folded her breast. With tenderness and love, she folded to her breast the wounded bird, then hurried to her place. And Jesus said to her, "Why did you leave the dead to save a wounded bird?" The maiden said, This lifeless body needs no help from me, but I can help yet while life is. My mother taught me this. My mother taught that grief and selfish love and hopes and fears are but reflexes from the lower self, that what we sense are but small waves upon the rolling billows of a life. These all will pass away. They are unreal. Tears flow from hearts and flesh. The spirit never weeps. And I am longing for the day when I will walk in light, where tears are wiped away. My mother taught that all emotions are the sprays that rise from human loves and hopes and fears, that perfect bliss cannot be ours till we have conquered these. And in the presence of that child, Jesus did bow his head in reverence. He said, "For days and months and years I've sought to learn this highest truth that man can learn on earth, and here a child, fresh brought to earth, has told it all in one short breath." No wonder David said, "O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings thou hast ordained strength." And then he laid his hand upon the maiden's head and said, "I'm sure the blessings of my Father God will rest upon you, child, forevermore." The work of Jesus in the chamber of the dead was done, and in the temple purple room he stood before the Hierophant. He was clothed in purple robes, and all the brothers stood. The Hierophant arose and said, "This is a royal day for all the hosts of Israel. In honor of their chosen son, we celebrate the great Passover feast." And then he said to Jesus, "Brother, man, most excellent of men, in all the temple tests you have won out. 6 times before the bar of right you have been judged. 6 times you have received the highest honors man can give, and now you stand prepared to take the last degree. Upon your brow I place this diadem, and in the great lodge of the heavens and earth you are the Christ. This is your great Passover rite. You are a neophyte no more, but now a mastermind. Now man can do no more, but God himself will speak and will confirm your title and degree. Go on your way, for you must preach the gospel of goodwill to men and peace on earth, must open up the prison doors and set the captives free." And while the Hierophant yet spoke, the temple bells rang out. A pure white dove descended from above and sat on Jesus' head. And then a voice that shook the very temple said, "This is the Christ." And every living creature said, "Amen." The great doors of the temple swung ajar. The Logos journeyed on his way, a conqueror. Can I tell you how much I love the tests at Heliopolis and the way that Jesus overcomes them? We got to remember, right? He is the teacher. He is our way shower. And I love how he reasons these trials. Because before I'd read these, I reasoned my own trials, and they were somewhat similar, and sometimes I succeeded and sometimes I didn't. But after reading this, I always knew that I had a text to come back to if I ever needed more guidance. So let's go back to the beginning. We're at the 6th degree, carnal love versus love divine. I love that. So it says these rooms where he now sits were some of the grandest and most well-appointed and furnished rooms in the temple, but few get to enter in because the token for entrance is obtaining the victory over fear. And so often we live our lives, we live in fear, and so we don't get to that point. And so it's important as we go through the tests 1 through 5, and especially that last one, 5, where we stand up in our higher selves, rise up in our own power, and say, what are these chains that bind me, and who put me in this prison thus? And then call in the light to blind the darkness, realizing that the chains that were there were nothing but ropes and weeds, and who brought us there was our own thoughts that allowed that to happen. So once we've overcome that fear or those fears, then we're able to step into a place of true love and expression, or at least to test it. It's in the Hall of Harmony that a beautiful maiden comes and she sings a song that touches his heart, and he's never seen such beauty. And I think we've all been there, right? And he loses himself in his thoughts, right? After she leaves. We've been there. We have a crush that just takes over our ever waking thought. Can't concentrate on anything else. We can't eat. I mean, it's that first flush of falling in love sometimes. And if it's a relationship that we then move into, there comes a point where it's like we need to pull back, and sometimes that pullback looks like a breakup, because it's like, wait a minute, I forgot myself in this. And when we say forgot ourselves, it's like we've either taken on the qualities of our lover, or taken on qualities that we know they appreciate, denying ourselves our fullest expression. Or it's something more along the lines of, before I met this person, I was focused on me and doing what I was doing to move my world forward. And then I got sidetracked by being enamored, and by this feeling of being in love. And then we have to come back to ourselves, because we realize we've gotten off our path and we need to come back to doing that. Now, if we're in a relationship where we can maintain our own discipline on our path, and we have the support of the one who loves us, and are able to, as Khalil Gibran says, let there be spaces in your togetherness, so you walk your separate paths but together. That's great, but if not, it ends up in breaking up. So we've all kind of experienced that, I think. I don't think anything here is new. And if you have not experienced that yet, well, lucky you that you will have this, because it's a rush and it's part of life. And I want you all to experience it. Better to have loved and lost than not to have loved at all. So there is that. And who doesn't want to be swept up and swept off their feet and, just completely taken over by these amazing feelings? But, we got to come back and remain on our path, which is not to say we can't have love. Again, we remain on our path, yet walk together with another. And so that's what he decides. And at first, so there's that range of emotions, right? There's at first that flush of love, and then it's the longing and being enraptured when our love is not present. And then it's the inner turmoil of, I want to be with this person so bad, I want this over here, but my path is taking me this way and I need to focus. But I want this thing, but I need to do this, and which one will win, right? But once we make that decision, there's that release. And in this case, Jesus makes a decision to keep to his path, because he knows he has a greater love to bring that is for the rest, for all the world, not just him being in this, being in the world to experience love for himself. And so once he makes that decision, he's back in his power, and he has the strength to continue. And though it is heartbreaking to let his love go, he also has the presence of mind to know the greater truth. And that is, by that tie of love, they are bound, and they will see each other again. Right? And it happens. I love that it happens twice. Like she comes and doesn't know he's there. He sees her and instantly is entranced and is in love. She goes away. He thinks about her constantly. And by that thought, she obviously feels that current and then comes back. And so he has this moment in time that he gets to spend with her. And so there's already that connection. And then he says, because now that she is aware of him, she too is entranced and enamored. But he says, what is it? I must then bid you go. The world is craving a love that I have come to manifest. I will see you in the masses of the people. I will hear your voice in song. But for now, I have to focus on my path. But we will meet again, he tells her. And I think there's this level of trust in that. And I like how, it's like, yeah, I will see you again. But there's not a time limit placed on it. And it's released, right? It's not, I'm going to see you again and I'm going to hold on it and keep looking for you in everything, but I will recognize you when I see you in the things that happen in my world. Thus, I just find that so instructive. Maybe because I ran into somebody this week that I met that I really liked, but we didn't exchange numbers, and I'd like to see them again, but we'll see. But I'm also committed to this discipline, so there's that. But it would be nice to have somebody walking along the path with me. I mean, hello, all this by myself? No. We have other plans, don't we, God? And so, Jesus conquers love divine over carnal love. I love that. I do. I just do. And then he's now like at that level. So he's conquered fear, which gives him entry into these rare rooms. And once he conquers carnal love through love divine, he's now able to take a senior course of study that could only be taught by the Hierophant. So I love that. I love that. And so he's, I think it's interesting too that, one of his greater messages is that death is an illusion. But he does spend time studying the mysteries of Egypt and mummification and preservation. So if death is an illusion, why spend time learning about what others did to try to get to that level of awareness? Because what's the purpose of mummification and preservation? And, filling temples with sacrifice servants and pots of honey and gold and things that you would need in the afterlife if you didn't have a belief that life in some form was going to continue. And so even in his awareness that death is an illusion, he still studies the expressions and manifestations of people who were trying to get to that level of understanding. I just think that's so fascinating. There's quite a bit in that. And of course, while he is studying the topic of death, right, he then sees a funeral procession and hears a woman wailing in her grief. And, he brings to mind what is said earlier of, we've encountered passages about death earlier in the Aquarian, but he reminds us that death is a cruel word, that your son can never die. He was assigned a task to do while in human form. He completed that task, shuffled off this mortal coil, and then went on to do other work in other planes that we don't see. And, gives her instruction that, don't give so much and give all into your grief, because you will be lost in it. But a way out of that is to begin to serve and do for others. And I think a lot of people would agree with that when you are too focused on your own troubles and your own problems or your own grief and depression, that one of the ways you can begin to lift yourself out of it is to begin to think of others and do for others, right? Because a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. You can't concentrate on your own grief while trying to help someone else. And so if you put your mind and heart into service and helping others in some way, or maybe it's your work that you focus on or something else outside of self, then that will help lift you out of that level, that despair. One thing I will say though, for any of you who have reason to grieve, feel your emotions as they arise. And if the need to cry is there, do that. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, take the time to feel those emotions and let them fully express. And the reason for that is when they come up for healing, that's when you're ready to be healed. They're ready to be acknowledged. Too often, for any number of reasons, when we get taught, don't cry, it'll be okay, don't cry. Be tough, you're strong, you can handle this, as if tears somehow mean weakness, and they don't. It is important you're human, And so it's important to feel the full range of your emotions and give them their full expression without judging them and without censoring them and without trying to suppress them. So if you are given to grief and it rises up, let it express fully and let it be resolved and healed. The other thing is that if you're standing in the grocery store and you're worried about what are these people going to think, first of all, we need to remember they don't matter, and what they think don't matter, right? But if you suppress those emotions just to get through the moment, or just to, I can't deal with this now, I'm going to deal with it later, it's got to go somewhere. So, it can't, if you're not going to release it, it's going to go back, right? And it's going to get buried somewhere in the body. And over time, and based on other stresses and how holding your breath and all of that, it gets stuck in the body as pockets of pain, and become blocks to you being able to flow freely. And so you've now created a block that you're going to have to heal at some point, and then tapping back into it and finding it again. It's like having to dig out a needle in a haystack. You'll come to a lesson where you have to practice forgiveness or something, and it'll be like, well, what am I supposed to forgive? I don't know. Or what stuck feelings is it I don't know. And then you've got to sit and meditate and like find it again for it to just release it when it comes up. Trust me, it is as hard as it might be in that moment. When it passes, you will feel freer for it and you will be better for it. And one last thing I'll mention when we go back to the Aquarian. Our tears are made of chemicals. And if you notice, when you're crying because of sadness and deep grief, your eyes get super red, they're stingy, they're puffy, your nose swells, and you just look a mess, right? That's because of the grief and like stress chemicals that are released through your tears. They have a different composition and react differently in the body, hence the redness of the eyes and the burning and all of that. Tears of joy, on the other hand, and excitement, and even tears of relief have a different chemical makeup. And you notice, like, you can cry with joy and your eyes are brighter because of it. And your smile is bigger because of it. That's because the chemicals released are different. And so, pain is just, chemicals attached to a certain set of thoughts, held in the body by breath, right? So when you're feeling pain, breathe and let it release and let those chemicals flow. Drink lots of water as well to help them flow out and be cleansed. Tears are cleansing. How about that? All right, back to the Aquarian. Okay, so he talks to the weeping woman, and then he meets the child, who, gives a Jesus level teaching, right? Because she stops to see the dead bird, and she takes care of the living because the dead has no more use for her. My mother taught that grief and selfish loves and hopes and fears are but reflexes of the lower self. Reflexes of the lower self, they are responses from the carnal self. Whereas when we're in our higher state, we recognize that there is no death, there is no separation. I have as much as I cried when my father passed, he is still as close to me now, 10, 12 years later. Because I do recognize the greater truth, which is that he just gone on to do other work on another plane. But if I need to talk to him, I can. You can be just as close. The thing that I might miss in my physical world, and the thing that like even now makes me tear up, is like just that, like things that happen in the physical, or that can only happen in the physical. Like I miss his voice, right? Or the way he would call me baby girl, or a hug, because no hug felt like my dad's hug, right? So those things, yes, I'll miss and I'll tear up, and remember and all of that. But if it comes to like, hey, I need to feel my dad's energy, or, you know, I need his help with something, all I have to do is call on it, talk to him like I would if he was, you know, on the phone with me. And, you know, you can try that too with those who've gone on to other planes to do other work. So, yeah, so she gives this, you know, master lesson, and she and Jesus walk together, and then Jesus, the Hierophant, the other priests of the temple, are all there to recognize his identity as the Christ. He has mastered all of the major tests that we encounter, and he is now ready. He's no longer a neophyte. He's no longer a student. He is a mastermind, and he is ready now to go out and be the teacher and bring his gift and share his purpose, which was to, you know, peace on earth, and the message of peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And so that concludes our studies in Heliopolis. All right, so that concludes our studies in Heliopolis. We will be back next week to see where this takes us. I already know, and I know I'm excited, and if you can't tell by now, it just gets better and better. So come on back. We'll see you next week. I love you in the meantime. Bye.